All right, well, we are ready to go. My name is Ian Hanou. I'm with Planet Geo and Tree Plotter Software based in Denver, Colorado in the United States. Okay, great. Ben or Damien, you might just mute your line and vice versa when we're not presenting, just for any background noise, things like that. Well, just for introductions here, this webinar is titled Urban Trees Deserve Modern Management Software. This is an introduction to tree plotter software. Let's go to the next one here. So presenters, actually I'm missing Damien, but this is Ian right now, based in the United States. And then I have Ben Kenyon, Principal Consulting Arborist and Director with Homewood Consulting, and he is joined by Damien, and I'll let you guys introduce yourself in just a minute. I founded Planet Geo in 2012. My background's in forestry and GIS and software development. And just a quick introduction to some of the activities and events going on right now. This webinar is really a high-level introduction to Tree Plotter as a whole. Really good first introduction, and it should be a very broad one. We also have hands-on interactive workshops coming up. So I'm going to be in Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, and Brisbane for a 2-week period at the first half of September. I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to present on Friday in Adelaide at the TreeNet conference, and I'll be joined by Adrian Maroon from the city of Whittlesea near Melbourne, and also Homewood staff will be assisting with the workshops the Friday of TreeNet. In addition to that, on September 4th, 10th, and 12th, we have 3 other workshops, and Ben will be joining me in Melbourne and Sydney, as well as Adelaide for those workshops. And then through the Queensland ARB Association, we also have 1 additional workshop on September 12th in Brisbane. So you can go onto our website and register for these events. We're really looking forward to them and hope we get a really good crowd. I'm going to pass it off to Ben for an introduction for Homewood, and then I'm going to have the second half of the presentation, or maybe the second 3 quarters, to give more of a background on Planet Geo. So with that, Ben, do you want to share your screen, or are you okay just viewing?
No, I'm happy where we are, Ian. Not a problem at all, just looking at your screen. For most of the participants, I think I know nearly everyone there. For those that don't, I'll try and be brief. Homewood Consulting, we've been around for 15 odd years now. I started in the tree industry as a climber, and I guess moved into consultancy after 20 odd years climbing. And Damien is also a co-presenter. Damien's been with us for 5 years. He's got a practical background in arboriculture as well. And I guess probably for me it's quickly about talking about our experience with Tree Plotter at the moment. For most of you, you probably know that Homewood's got its own data collection system, which we've been using for a long time. And I've been trying to develop, I guess, a data collection and tree management tool for quite a while. And I reckon over the last 10 years, I've written down the specification for that program a number of times. And earlier this year, Ian got in touch with me and I started to look at Tree Plotter. And when I look at the list of criteria that I had for what I thought was an ideal design, I've got to say, Ian, I reckon you've ticked off the vast majority of the boxes that I had as significant criteria. So we weren't really sure where to start with Tree Plotter. We've signed up to it as a user. And what we thought we'd do to start with was to replicate our own system for collecting data on our construction impact reports and on our small sort of risk assessment reports. And Damien, I might get you to take us through that how the process went, and I guess what we've been able to do with it so far.
Okay, hi everyone, Damien here. So yes, we signed on, and I think Ben, you're intending for me to talk about how we set up our tree plotter at our end, and with our app. Is that correct?
Yes, please, Damo.
Yeah, no worries. So, I mean, we had our own criteria for fields that we wanted to collect, and they're fields that we've been collecting, forever and a day, and basically we put that to Tree Plotter and send them a list of all the fields we want, plus the attributes that we want in each field, and they are able, like you can see on the screen here, and they are able to put them in. Now, the base app that was provided, when we first signed up, had other fields that we didn't intend to use. So Tree Plotter, in conjunction with us, we either deleted them or just hid some of them, and basically customized it to our own usage. And I know we were talking with Ian just last week, and we are still doing minor tweaks. The more we use it, the more we find little things that we can optimize a little bit, and we keep just tweaking it slightly. We're still not using all of the features that are within it, and that's basically because we're still new to it, and we need to work out what works for us and what doesn't. The location fields, we're not using a lot of that, and the management fields, we're only using some of them.
Damien, do you want to just take us through, or this might be covered by you a little later, Ian, on plotting a tree, filling in the data, or is that something you're going to cover in detail?
We can certainly do that now, or we can do that at the end of the webinar. I wasn't sure if you wanted to add a new tree to your application, or if we could use the demo application.
Yeah, happy to use ours or the demo. Either one doesn't bother us, I don't think.
Okay. Well, how about this, Damien? I can just zoom in as you talk, and we can just go add one more tree, and then we'll actually delete it from this data.
For sure.
As a sample?
Yeah, because it is real data.
Yes, exactly.
The job's complete at least.
Oh, right.
Sure. Yeah, and I would say the imagery quality in this area is not as good as most other areas, it seems like.
Oh, I feel like that's good quality, and we're used to probably worse. Maybe that's an Australian thing.
Well, I'll show other areas, but we can talk about that. So, well, go ahead, Damien. I'll just go ahead and add a tree, and if you want to just talk through like your process of how this works, maybe mobile, how you use it.
Yeah. And so it's slightly different on the desktop in that we don't have the GPS turned on, but that's the crosshairs over on the left-hand side below the little house. If we were using the mobile app, we would turn on the GPS and locate ourselves. But then once we've got it located, Ian's clicked the add button, and he's simply clicked on the screen where the tree is, and we just start at the top and work our way down. Really, tree height, width, number of stems. Now, whether it's a single or a multi, if you click the multiple stem button, it allows you to put in 6 individual stems, and which will work out a combined DBH, just the same as the Australian standard. Something that I really like about the app when using it on a mobile device is numeric fields such as the height, width, and the DBH ones. You get a little next button, and you can simply type in the values, push next, and it takes you to the next field, and just sort of tabs you through. And it's pretty user friendly. Diameter base for calculating SRZ. Then the genus and species. It loads up the most common that you've used on your device, and I'm not sure, Ian, how often does that how big can that list of most common get?
What it does is in this case, because you have multiple client sites or locations, it filters that down. So it's specific in your case to each data set, but if you're a city, then it will just be one single data set. So it's pulling from the entire, however many trees you have in the inventory.
Okay, so it's not actually specific to the device.
No. It's updated directly as if you add 10 more trees, that top 10 might change.
Yeah, for sure. Maturity, the stumps and the vacants there are a bit of a carryover from a larger inventory, and that's not something we're using regularly. Condition, health, structure, useful life expectancy, some significance fields and some landscape significance fields, and yeah, they're all radio buttons. Just keep clicking your way down. Then we've got some defects fields and comments. You can take a photo on the mobile device and attach it. And then when you get to the bottom, yeah, as Ian's hovering on the scroll to top button, it'll on a mobile device, that's really helpful because you'll be right down the bottom of the list. Instead of having to use your finger to scroll back up, you just tap that arrow, it takes you straight back up to the top. So as I said, we're not really using location. That's pulling the address data out of Google, and we're tending to skip straight to management or risk assessment, which we've got QTRA filled in there.
Yep, here is the address that Damien was just referring to. So it uses a Google service to populate that, and if you don't want that, we can pull address data automatically from parcel property data sets and things like that. So there's some options. Yeah. Do you want to talk about maybe risk or construction or?
Risk is a good one. Again, radio buttons for all the different values. Obviously for QTRA, there's a lot of target values. And that was something that we discussed at length with Tree Plotter as to how best to put a long list like that in, because you could have a drop down list which wouldn't be terribly efficient, whereas the radio buttons are a lot easier to use on a mobile device. So it can be a bit device specific. If you want it to be a drop down, I believe they can make it a drop down, and just whatever works for I guess the way you collect your data.
I think, if I can interrupt there, Damien, I think one of the biggest things I've found with it, though, was that I guess the default for a lot of the stuff was drop downs and so on, and we requested that they were radio buttons because we're going to be using them on our mobile device primarily. And the change from the drop down to the radio button or vice versa was extremely quick. Like it was, not an issue at all. And so sure. I guess it really just comes down to what your personal preference is. That was our personal preference.
I see a question from Jackie Brown. Can track be used? Track is the default, actually. We requested QTRA, but the app comes with track. Is that correct, Ian, or is it an add-on?
That's correct. Yeah, well, it isn't. So we have a basic version of track that's part of the complete product level, which is what most clients have. And then we also have an add-on module that is the much more detailed one, and I'll show it briefly in my slides. So yes, in fact, this is kind of an initial version of QTRA, and we're always working on other appraisal methodologies, other risk assessment methodologies. There's VTA, there's all sorts. So as we've expanded the last year and a half into England, South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia, we're obviously working on these modules.
Yeah.
And I think, Damien, if you could talk about load last and also the construction tab briefly, that'd be great.
Yeah, we're actually not using the construction tab currently, Ian. Okay. But load last, I can certainly speak to. That's probably one of the better features, and was used a lot in this job in particular. This job that we're looking at here was for a tree management plan, and the consultant Tim, he went through and collected all the larger trees which had variability in their data, but then he had 50 odd very young trees recently planted, which I said to him, oh, you should do them last and just do them all with the load last button, and it loads the details of the last selected tree, and so you can essentially pre-populate for trees that are very similar.
Correct. Yep. And you do get to customize the data fields that are populated for your load last button. We actually have a new interface coming out end of September that will allow users to do that themselves. Right now, we're doing that for you in the database. So
yeah.
So I'll just say no, and unless you had anything else to add, I'll just delete this. But
no worries.
And I think the only
Mark Reynolds question.
Yep. So, sorry, the only thing I was going to say, Damien, is this last tab is our simple version of our sort of work tracking. This does not exist if you have the work order management, because it's done in a different way, which I'll talk about in the slides.
Mark's got a question, Ian. Can you have either track or QTRA, or can you choose multiple depending on your project?
Yeah, it's
my
fully
answer would be, I imagine, yes, you can, but it'd just end up being another tab. Sure.
Yeah. The option for ISA Track has several sub-tabs. We worked with one of the ISA instructors here in the United States, who's one of our clients, software clients. And so, yeah, you can basically customize some combination of both of those. Not an issue. I will just delete the tree in this case. And when you're done, you'll just turn off the add tool. So anything else? Maybe you want to talk about you want to switch to a different client site?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could switch to the Moira client for us, Ian, and some of the reporting functionality there and the filtering. There's quite a few local government participants.
That'll be the most normal.
I reckon for me, this is probably the area that I think a lot of systems have been letting us down in so far. But so for those that aren't familiar with Moira, it's along the Murray River, northern Victoria, on the border with New South Wales, obviously being the Murray. But the ability to automatically generate statistics by zooming in on the map and querying the map is what really excites me with Tree Plotter. Can you see, maybe go into Cobram if you can, Ian? That's Numurkah. Yeah, Numurkah will be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed on the left, the bar charts automatically update when I ran that filter, and I forgot to check this little box here, but this will bound. I'll just click it again, and it will bound the map to the filter.
And so I think from a reporting point of view, for a lot of local government organisations, and from a generating statistics and all of those sorts of things, the ability to quickly filter and query the data using the fields that you've got and the mapping window is just awesome. And seeing our legend there, Ian, can you change the legend to botanical name?
Yeah. Sorry, I was. In addition to that filtering, you can, if once you have filtered a selection, you may filter trees on a particular road, for example. You can export only the filtered trees to CSV or shapefile if you want to use just that selection.
Yeah, sorry, I had a different tool turned on to do that filter. Just real quick, let me update that. I always notice it goes slower when I'm doing a webinar. It's like a Murphy's Law.
Yeah. It's always the way, isn't it?
I think the webinar takes a lot of power. So
a lot of bandwidth.
There we go.
Look at that.
And I don't see you mentioned you can color code by anything that you add, but I don't see that you have the.
Maybe just go for useful life expectancy in that case, man.
Sure.
But I mean the symbology is something that you can change pretty easily with you guys and say, look, we want the symbology based on this, we want it based on that, and get your most common ones that you're going to use and query.
I think we recently added works priority to the symbology.
Yeah, look at that, 29% grey box root gum iron bar. It's awesome, and that's just looking at the trees in Numurkah on our most common species there.
Yeah, and I always like to point out. So if you wanted, as an example, to say what are the largest and most mature, you could do two filters. You have the spatial filter of the drawing of the map.
Yeah.
And then if I wanted to also say, well, what are my largest species? You can just instantly save that chart very quickly, and you can save these filters as well. So now I can clear that one and go back. Was there anything else, Ben, that you think?
No, look, I just think for me is the data management side of it's probably just a world of opportunities for us, really. The next thing that I'd like is, once you do have the data and you've queried it and the rest of it, and I'm sure you're going to talk to this later, Ian, but the works order management stuff, and that is, okay, we've got a bunch of dead trees in Numurkah. We would like somebody to go and prune, remove, do whatever to those trees. How do we send that to our in-house team, a contractor, and how do we get that data back?
Sure. Yeah, it's part of my slides. For a 1 hour webinar, I usually just try to cover it in the slides. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, but I think this is still a good introduction, because using these tools, filtering your legend, your reports, also tools like the one I'm opening now is a data management tool where you can do a bulk update or a global update to any number of fields. So you can choose multiple fields and update. Maybe it's something like this. You could choose condition. So you can actually save these, where we call them a routine. But it's a way to, again, to do your data management, not much different than how you would maybe in a spreadsheet or an ArcGIS, but directly within the tool. And you can do this. You can do the same for work history, like to populate a group of trees.
One thing we haven't seen right now, Ian, is just, I guess at the moment we've seen the mapping view. There's a tabular view of the data as well, which you can filter and query on also.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I think, Damien referred to this earlier. So we have the data tables, which is essentially the table view of your information. One of the things you can do is customize what columns, what data fields are showing. I don't think. Hold on 1 second. There we go. So we have a tool at the top left called Views, and I'm not sure, Ben and Damien, how much you've used that, but you can create as many views as you want, and that way you can view just specific columns. One thing I've noticed for yours is it looks like you actually have, at the default, is showing just about everything, and just so it'll work a lot faster. It'll work a lot faster if you just limit it to maybe your most 10 or 15 that you need most often. So that's something we can do for you.
And so you can just do you put a hide button there, or do you just say, look, we only want to see these ones in this view?
Yeah, basically you just have a default view. So when you open up the Views tool, you can choose which field is visible at the start. And then you scroll down and you just say apply, and you'll see the columns get hidden. And you can save those. So if I just click here, you can name, so you've made one of them. So if I said create a view, you could name that view, and then it'll be.
Can you do that now, Ian? And say, well, let's create a new view.
Sure. So here, let's.
We just want asset ID, species, DBH, health and works, works and priority.
All right. I thought we had a toggle all button, but apparently not. So
it was up the top. Was the toggle all?
Was it there?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. There we go. It just okay. So say that one more time. Sorry. Common name?
We'll go species or botanical name.
Is that under scientific?
Yep, that's the one. Scientific height and trunk diameter, height range, trunk diameter, recommended works.
And let's see, is that what field?
I think it was works observations. Works and priority was the one I was thinking of.
See, so I'm going to W and I don't see it. Let me see. Tree work? That might be the one.
Yep, that's the one. That might be the one. And then the priority.
There we go.
There it is. Beautiful.
If you want one of them to be at the left, you just click that. So you can reorder these, sort them, things like that.
Beautiful.
for that, why don't I just go ahead and hit apply. So yeah, you can do sorting. You can also save a filter. So Ben and Damien, if you didn't know that, you could have a view that has certain columns, and then you could also have a filter and then rename the view and sort of like a save as, and do a duplicate of the view, but just with a different title to it. So maybe it's, you know, certain types of work or something like that. So let's say save, and you want to just call this default view?
Yeah.
And we'll just hit apply. So there you go. You can also print. You can also print a tree. So you could print a, you know, a PDF of all the tree information. So, and zoom to a tree, things like that.
Can you zoom to that Eucalyptus microcarpa? Nice.
Yep.
And that's got all of our details on it. Beautiful.
So if I only wanted to see just these trees, I could filter down, and now I have a very short list, and I could export that data to either Excel or to shapefile for ESRI and other GIS. So.
And I've got to say, from our point of view, Ian, we're still not using all of your reporting functionality a lot, but we're using that export function a hell of a lot. So we'll export it straight to a spreadsheet or straight into a shapefile for our mapping software. But you've got quite a few different reports that are automated. So that's something that we'll continue to look at and customize, I reckon, over the next year or two.
Sure thing. Okay. Anything else, Ben?
Look, I'm pretty sweet there at the moment, Ian. Damien?
No, nothing to add from me.
Okay. All right.
Any questions from the group?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the same thing. Yeah, it's harder for me in full screen to see if there's questions. I'm not sure if there are any. Just please go ahead and jump in. But well, why don't I give we're going to kind of step back a little bit, and I'm going to give a little bit more of a tour of the application. And I just wanted to start off and describe. So Planet Geo, I founded the company in 2012 after doing basically the same kind of work for about 10 years or so. We're about 30 employees. We're a mix of foresters, arborists, GIS analysts, software developers, and planners. We have 4 kind of core services. We use Tree Plotter ourselves, just like Homewood does, for inventories, risk assessment projects. We of course then use that for reports and plans for our clients. We also actually started the company really doing almost the majority of our work was doing GIS and remote sensing analysis of urban tree canopy cover. So we do a lot of satellite imagery analysis, LiDAR analysis, things like that as well. We've done over 200 of those projects in the last 10 years or so. So at the top left is a canopy cover analysis map in a GIS layer and one of our reports. And then, of course, we have our software group. So about half the company is focused on our software products. And here's just a real quick high-level view. The 3 main products are Tree Plotter, which, of course, is what we were just showing and talking about today. We also have Parks Plotter, which is essentially identical. It works and acts the same way as Tree Plotter. You can have both of them in the same tool. So once you know how to manage tree data within our platform, you can also manage park assets. So it's really a true asset management program.
Just to interrupt, Ian, just a question from Jason Goldstein. If a tree is removed and replaced, is there an opportunity to save the historical data and create a new one?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You don't ever really lose data. So you would change the status of the tree to removed. You can also optionally archive that. So it's really up to the user, but we have a flag or a checkbox to archive a tree. And then later you have a settings where you can say show archived or show historical data. Yeah, and I'll talk a bit more about that as well. So, and then if you're in the work management package, so the sort of core tool that's not shown right here because it's more of a module. These are 3 products. The the main, I would say that by far and away the most common add-on module is what Ben mentioned a minute ago, the works management package. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. Just briefly, the last one at the top middle, the Canopy Planner, is more of a landscape scale tool. So it's not individual trees. It is looking at the entire tree canopy cover. And it's a tool for prioritizing planting and projects and things like that. And you can have all the tools in one single application. Let's see, so it's a very diverse set of tools, really robust. I won't cover all of that, but we'll just keep moving on. So I thought I'd start with just some kind of frequently asked questions. With Tree Plotter, you can import existing data. The example at the top right is City of Whittlesea near Melbourne, who we've been working with for about 12 months now on a trial of both Tree Plotter and the Works package. You can obviously customize the data structure like we just showed with Damien. You can use GPS and the GIS tools, so there's different ways to do that. Either when collecting data or other ways that you use the mapping application. Because it's a browser-based tool, there's no installation with Tree Plotter or any of our software. You simply access the tool whether you're on your smartphone, your tablet, or your desktop computer from your web browser. And we developed Tree Plotter using Google Chrome, so it's our preferred browser. However, Safari on iOS works almost just as good, I would say. So in those two, we did a survey of our clients. I think about 90% of all clients are either using Chrome or Safari. But again, it does work on Internet Explorer, Edge, Firefox, and so forth. It is, because it's browser-based, it's obviously an online cloud-based application, but we do have an offline module that I'll talk about later. You can also create, I showed this briefly with the demonstration earlier, you can create unlimited user accounts, and you can also define custom roles. So for example, you can have administrators, users, which would be more of a staff level, let's say. You could have contractors that have minimal minimal data editing privileges, and then they can also have read-only privileges. So they might be able to see certain information but not edit that information. And in addition, you can also hide a lot of data, fields, even tools. So we can really parameterize this application, if you will, in many ways. We get a lot of questions about, well, can I add a new tree species to the list? I don't see one that I need, and the answer is yes. We have a series of what we call lookup tables, and these tables are editable by you. So you can customize things that way. We also typically, I would say at least half of our clients have existing data that we built a tool called the Uploader to upload very different types of data sets into our platform. So we've been using that, and some of our clients use it as well. And we will often just take the species data that they give us, and that becomes their starting point for their species list. We can also overlay, you can see right here in the screenshot at the top right, we can overlay all sorts of GIS boundaries. We can do custom aerial imagery, things like that. So if you have imagery on a server already in your area, we can display that instead of our default imagery, which is Google and ESRI. And as we showed just a minute ago, you can manage different clients, jobs, works, and also have this be a multi-organizational tool, which is very similar to what we just showed a minute ago. And finally, we get a lot of questions, especially with newer technology and the direction things are going, where we built an API where we can integrate with other systems. So the data that's collected and edited within our platform can be integrated and displayed and updated in other systems in real time. It's really cutting edge. We're very, very excited to be able to provide that. So there's asset management programs that we can integrate with. We have a couple of out-of-the-box integrations with ESRI as well.
That's a pretty big one, I think, Ian, for a lot of local government organisations where they've got existing asset management software, but yet nothing that deals specifically with trees. And getting the IT departments and the GIS departments to actually get something that is usable seems to take around about 100 years. And so I think for a lot of people, if your system will slot straight into that, this could be a really, really easy solution.
Yeah, so we have a lot more information on the API, and there's many different types of integrations as well. Some are simple, some are complex. I think I've covered most of this. The only one I will say is we do have a local server in Sydney. So we actually have servers in Australia, England, Canada, and the United States right now. I'll just cover this at a high level. On the left, these are the different types of, again, we have many, many different kinds of clients. We have nonprofits, city, private consultants, campuses, universities, and what we've developed within the system are different databases, or sometimes they're mapping or GIS layers. So we have trees, we have what we call work records, and when a work record, which is essentially a maintenance or works task, when that is completed, it gets archived and transferred into history, and that's how we run our reports. It's either active work records or it gets transferred to history when it's completed. We have the jobs and work order modules. The module we call work order management for municipal use also includes the service request functionality, so that's a separate database. And you can see these on the map, so you can see where service requests are, where work orders are, and so forth.
Sorry, another question on Q&A, Ian. Do many tree plotter clients have a dedicated system manager, i.e. someone who controls all the uploading and downloading of data?
Yeah, good question. There definitely are one or more administrator level for every client that we have. Not that many clients import or upload data too often. So the ones we have that use that mostly in the United States are U.S. state agencies. So we have, I think, 10 state agency clients here. Where I'm located in Colorado is one of them, and they have about 70 different cities where they've imported their tree inventories into the tool. I think we have a couple of states with maybe 90 to 100 cities where they basically aggregate and compile that so they can get a statewide or a statewide view of species composition and things of that nature. But I can talk about that more if there's further questions.
Cool.
We also have an inspections database just coming down the list. If you're private sector and you're doing estimates or proposals, that's another database. And then, of course, with Parks Plotter, that has its own set of databases. On the right, we already pretty much covered all of those. So I think we covered, I'll just look at the bottom. You can also create a URL. It's a custom URL. So I should have done that earlier with your application, Damien. I could have zoomed in, done a filter, and then you can actually save that as a custom URL, and you can copy and paste that. And what it does is it remembers where you are and what you've saved. And so it's a way to send people a version of your data without actually them having to get the tool and apply the filters themselves. You can do that for them and save those sessions, essentially. Well, again, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over this. We already showed how to add a tree, which is great. You can use either the by map method, which is where the crosshairs is, or you can use GPS. So a lot of our clients are using Bluetooth GPS receivers, which for maybe less than $1,000 US at least, can get you 1 or 1.5 meter accuracy, and they can go plug directly into your through Bluetooth to your mobile device. Again, I'm gonna go through some of these very quickly, so we have a lot of other content and we can get to questions. But you have multiple base map options, as I said earlier. So you can simply change the base map, maybe from printing maps versus for data collection.
External layers supplied by the client or by other things, and how hard, difficult, easy is that to load as a background?
Yeah, great question. So the question basically is, if we have data layers like from GIS that we want to display as
yeah, like a footpath or a road or a drain or something along those lines.
Yeah, so we have two choices. One is we receive the files from our client and we put those on our server, and then you can turn them off in the legend. I showed it very briefly earlier. The other option that has a lot of advantages is we use web services. So more and more frequently, cities have data on their own mapping servers, and we don't need to get a copy of that data. Instead, we can just simply point to that on their server. So we try to, I mean, whenever that works, we try to encourage our clients to go with that route. And one of the huge benefits of that is if, let's say they have property ownership information or right-of-way boundaries, Well, some of those data sets change frequently, maybe even every week or every month. We don't want to have to get a new copy of that data. So if it's sitting on your server where it's getting edited directly, it's always the most current in your tool, meaning in your tree plotter application. So it's really a big benefit.
So the two options are get a copy of the data and send it to you, and it becomes an additional background layer that we can load. Or if you're a municipality, I guess get permission to get your system to look to where it's stored.
That's exactly right.
Cool.
Ian, are there any effects on the app depending on how many layers you might have loaded? If you had roads, cadastre, footpaths, more and more and more?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say no. It's just as fast when you have tons of data layers, but that's not the case. I mean, you do. We had a client in Nashville, Tennessee, recently, and what they did was they were primarily focused on a downtown core, and so they clipped all those data sets when they gave it to us because it made things operate quite a bit faster. And again, sometimes it's going to be dependent on your server. So if the server that it's coming to us is fast, then that's going to help. What else? Sometimes you can reduce like the attributes, all sorts of things you can do in GIS to minimize that. The other part of the answer, Damien, is we have a zoom extent. So once you zoom in, then it starts drawing, and that's easy for us to set as well. That way, you don't, at a citywide scale, you're not seeing all of those data layers.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, the next couple of views were just simply screenshots to show some of the different ways that our clients have set up the data collection. So the one on the right there was with Will C. Here was an interesting one. I came across this maybe a year ago. It's one of our clients in the state of Arizona. It's a private company, but they're even looking at the products that they're applying. So they're more of a plant healthcare operation. And moving forward, and I don't think you've seen this, Ben or Damien, but this is the work records database structure that we've created. It's a two-tiered system. If you look on the left, the bolded categories, we call those work categories. Those are planting related, pruning related, removal related, and so forth. And these are fully customizable by every client. It's a lookup table. You just simply open the table, and if you add a new category, instead of PHC, you want something else, say inspections. You just simply type in inspections, and it will show up in this form. And then the second tier is the specific types of pruning or types of planting operations and such. So on the right, what you're seeing is the specific details about one work task. So we can set the priority for that task, the status of it, maybe is there a recurrence or costs, things like that. I gave a recorded webinar presentation on March 1st where I walked through the work order management tool, and it's on our website. So it's definitely takes more than the hour that we have today.
Yeah.
And I think one of my next.
But ultimately, this is now updating your data as you go.
Correct. Yeah. I think everything on screen here we've covered. We showed the load last tool, the species at the top 10, and also I didn't mention this one. I'm not sure if you're aware, but if the example here that you can see where these on the right side, there's some data fields that are grayed out. What we can do is if the boundary, meaning the GIS layer, is on our database, we have some additional functionality or additional capabilities. So as you add the tree, or it could be a park bench, whatever it is, if it falls within some boundary like this park that's on screen, it will automatically populate the name of that park. So again, little things that speed up data collection and also provide a much more richer data set. Again, I'm going to go ahead and skip this for the sake of time. We talked briefly about Bluetooth GPS receivers, so that's an option. This is a client in Canada. They in addition, I should say, to individual trees, they also wanted to be mapping and managing more woodlots or forest stands. So it's a separate GIS layer that is an option to add to the system. And then again, you can collect different types of information like species composition and so forth.
And does this tool operate at the same time as the individual tree tool, Ian?
It does, yeah. If you look at the top right where it says layer and it says tree stands,
yep.
So you can go back and forth. You zoom into one area, whatever work you're doing, and just switch between the two layers.
Beautiful.
Which is the same way our Parks Plotter system works.
Yep.
So this is just showing another example. This is CAD data. We do also allow you to export data to AutoCAD DXF format. That's brand new as of maybe a month ago, maybe less. So that's another nice option, is to sort of integrate and also work more with CAD formatted data. Again, I'm going to go ahead and skip this. This is the data filter, the advanced filter tool that we used earlier in the live demonstration. So I'll just go ahead and skip over that. And we also looked at the data tables. So we applied a view to choose what column headings we wanted to do. And we showed the export tool. So that's good. One thing we have not shown yet is the inspection process. And if you follow me from the top left all the way down this form, basically here we have clicked on an individual tree, and we go into the details, or we can just directly open the inspection form. And the way this works is you can choose which data fields from your overall inventory that you want to include when you do inspections. So you may want to include a work management field or an observations list, things like that. So where the direction we've been going for a while is kind of this concept of a medical report card, where you get your medical chart and it says, oh, last time you were here, this is the health that you had as an individual. Well, we're just trying to take that concept and move that for trees. So we haven't quite built this part just yet, but the concept is that you can see, say, 2 or 3 or 4 data points over time where you do the inspections, and attributes like size, condition, health, useful life, and so forth. You can see for an individual tree as well as for the entire population how that's changed over time. So that's the direction we're going. Hopefully that's not too far out. But what this
and I guess, Ian, to interrupt there, in that is that you'll have your initial inspection done, and then you can continue to do multiple inspections. So whether it's every 5 years, every 6 months, every month, whatever you like. So you'll have a record of those inspections, and then you'll have separately works records associated with the tree as well. And they may be as a result of those inspections, or they may be independent of those inspections.
That is exactly right. And it's a perfect segue to my last point, which is so basically think of it in three sections. The top left is the updates to the asset itself. So this is maybe the DBH has changed, or the condition and the risk. The middle information is specific it's stored in the inspection. So those are your notes, your photos. So you can have photos for the tree, but also photos that were specific to that inspection. So that's the second area. And then the third one is, what I really love about this tool is how streamlined it is. So you can do the inspection, and as Ben just said, at the bottom left, it's a little small, but it says create work record and create or add to job. So you could determine that during that inspection, this is the work that's needed. You add that and create all in, literally when you hit submit, all of it's done at one time. So you can say, I did the inspection, this is the work that was needed, and I can add that to a works order all at the same time. An interesting way that with the legend, I'll just point out this little screenshot on the right. This is from Whittlesea's. We had some discussions and it took some back and forth, but they realized, oh, well, if we have in our display by in a field called inspect, we know whether it's completed or scheduled. Now we can color code data based on their current inspection as well.
Yeah, whether we need to go and inspect them or not.
Correct. Yeah. This is the print a tree. So I mentioned this earlier, but this is just relatively new. Maybe 6 months ago, we rolled this out as a nice printed version where you get your street view and your map. And Ben talked briefly earlier about some of the reports. So the interface on the left is actually coming out next month. This is a new portal essentially that we're calling the Hub, and it's an area it'll start off with your dashboard. You'll have a series of statistics and charts just like you do now. You'll also have this new reporting area. So these reports you see here in this list with the white background, those are specific to the work records and typically the overall work order management process. So we are very, very excited to roll that out. It's been a big project for a long time, and it's really it'll reduce the amount of customer service time that we're spending in the database fixing things, because it's going to give tools for our users to do a lot more. Well, just cruising along here, just going to very high level introduce that there are a lot of add-on modules. We do have YouTube videos on most of these, so you can come and watch a 2 to 3 minute video, learn more about these modules. We have an appraisal module, which right now we're working on a new update, but it's using the 9th edition of the DTLA trunk formula. That I know the 10th edition, of course, just came out, which the biggest change is it drops the species rating. So those are some changes we're obviously going to have to reflect. Plus, there are other systems in place, other methods and formulas. We have some contacts in England who are asking for the CAVIT program. So this is an ongoing thing for us. This is the one we currently provide right now for appraisals.
Just another question back on the works order stuff, Ian. Can you export the inspections work history to be able to provide for like insurance claims, etc.? That's from Rob Fraser.
Absolutely, yes. Everything is exportable or reportable.
Cool.
Yep, you can do that for an individual tree and see all liability, all history. It actually, that print report breaks out sections for the asset itself, the inspection history, and the work history.
Awesome.
On the right, another big hot topic is the iTree suite of tools, which in our consulting services, we use iTree heavily. We also have integrated some piece of it. They don't really give us the full breadth yet of their algorithms, but we're pretty much always talking to that group and working with them on how we can better integrate their latest science. But we use species, size, and location or land use to derive the individual tree benefits, and then we also summarize those across an entire tree population. So that's a big topic, certainly, in an area we're in very close discussions all the time with the iTree group on how we leverage what it is they do. We already talked about risk assessments, so on the left, I'm just going to skip that one, and I'm going to go to the example on the right. Again, I'm going over the different modules and add-ons. This is the offline data collection tool. It looks just a little bit different than Tree Plotter, but this allows you to choose an area where you're not going to have either a good connection, or maybe you're on a device without a data plan. So while you're on Wi-Fi, you choose the area. You can then go out and either add new data or edit existing data. You can do, create new work, things like that.
So this is something we haven't used at all yet, Ian. So it's probably the next thing that we want to test, because quite often we are out in remote areas, and yeah, pretty excited about giving it a crack at some point soon.
Yeah, certainly. It's just a mirror copy of your data. So everything you've done to customize the tool will be brought right over. So it won't, in that sense, it won't be any different. We've had a lot of good feedback. I mean, the first thing I'll say is it doesn't do everything. It's very streamlined for data collection and for updating information, and for, like I said, creating new work. But it doesn't do the full work order management. It doesn't have the charts and the graphs and all of those things. It's a very trimmed down version of Tree Plotter. But our staff, our arborists, the feedback they've given is basically, there's no delay. I mean, you tap something and it's all just locally, and all you have to do is hit sync when you're done, when you're back on Wi-Fi and sync to the cloud. And
it just synchronizes as soon as you're back in range.
Exactly. Yeah, you can still do photos. There's some limitations. I think you can do up to 50 photos on either Android or iOS right now. Is what one of our folks told me. So we have a brand new, a week ago, we just rolled out a new video for the newest version of the offline tool. So it's on our YouTube channel.
Sweet.
Yeah, and there's some other things we need to still do. Like you can't display your GIS boundary. So if you wanted your property ownership, you can't do that on the offline just yet. But it's, we'll get there. There's just so much to do. So.
A couple of questions from the participants, Ian. For the reporting, can you filter by date range and by works completed? I suspect the answer is absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. I could just for 1 second here, if I go over to the Whittlesey app has, let me just.
And another question from Jenny Garden about the metrics being used for street trees with the iTree eco values. They may be overestimated.
It's interesting. I literally today had an email from one of the folks at iTree who says, you know, that the difference between what we're currently using versus the newest that they have, and they just said today they're working on basically an API or a web service of some type, but it may be 2019, like even late 2019. They were indicating that would be accessible and available. We have done some other things though too. We've done. One of the things we did was we wanted to put together cumulative or lifetime benefits of the tree. So maybe the first 5 years, it's very, very little benefits. Even that next 5 to 10, it's starting to show up. But of course, that second half of the tree's life is when you have the vast majority of. So one of the things we've done is, in particular, with some of our nonprofit clients who are mostly focused on new tree planting, we'll put together, say, 10 or 20 representative species in their area. And long story short, we will aggregate or sum all the values and build that out. So clearly the benefits to show for those organizations about new tree planting are going to be, those values are going to be much, much higher.
As the trees increase in size and stature.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So this is the reporting. Yep, cool.
Yeah. So to the question, there's like a list of reports here. You can see what you've done for pruning versus removals by species. So if you want to know, that level of detail, you can do that. And then again, you can't use it's due today or it was due this week. You can't use that unless you've put that into the system. So I just remind people it's not going to do all that for you. It's part of how you prep the work order. As long as you flag that, then these reports are going to do great things for you.
Yeah, nice.
Let me just come back to here, and I'm going to see how we're doing. We talked briefly about this earlier, being able to look at the rating. For anybody who's interested in more of the crowdsourcing, I guess, engagement and outreach aspect of tree mapping and tree management and tree benefits, this is just a few views of one of our this is a module we have for crowdsourcing, and what it does is you can log in with a social media account like a Facebook or your Google account without having to actually create a new account and a password. And then we simplified and streamlined if I just go to here, we simplified this process to make it just much easier for the public to, step one, here's how you add a tree. Step two, what kind of tree and how many. They can also do things like choose to receive certain communications. Again, we probably have 20 or 25 nonprofit organizations that do a lot of planting and education as our clients. And some easier tools to just a little more light and a little more fun, a little bit less data management. What did you do today? I pruned my tree.
That's cool.
Again, just for an introduction for an hour here, this is just a quick view of one of the printed work orders. You can choose what columns. Again, remember that tool called views. You can apply a view when you're creating a work order. So if it's pruning related, you might want certain columns, but if it's removal related, you might want different columns. Again, I'd be happy to show anybody in more detail this specific works management process, but it definitely takes a little more time. And we do have many short, like say 2, 3, 4, 5-minute videos, as well as full 1-hour webinars specifically to the works package. The next one I want to show is sort of the mirror tool, but it's for the private sector. So the private sector, what we do is we turn on certain tools and certain databases where, as an example here, instead of it being, say, the service request or work order, this is the estimate that you're sending to your client. So it's just a different way to set up Tree Plotter and to use this. And we probably have somewhere in the range, out of 150 or so clients, I think at least 40 are private firms and consultants, maybe more. It's probably in some ways, it's our fastest growing sector. But it really operates and works very, very similar, where you can create assign the work that's needed to those trees, enter the cost, and then go and print that off. You can also email. We have a third-party email system built into the platform.
Nice.
Yeah.
How much time have we got left, Ian?
Not much. Oh, maybe 0. Let's take a look here. Maybe I'll jump down to the resources. Yeah, actually, I was pretty much done. I was just going to let folks know we have a really great support site. Let me just go up. Yep. Okay.
Look, on the support note of things, Ian, I'll interrupt you there. With every question that we've had of you guys, the response has been unbelievable. Like if we've said, oh, you know, how hard is it to do X, Y, Z? We've had a response within 24 hours, and then it's normally been done within a day or so. So far, we haven't had a question where we've said, can the system do this, where you've said no. The answer has been consistently yes, and extremely responsive as well. So yeah.
Yeah, we worked very hard on that. There's a website called Capterra that does reviews of software, and we did a campaign and had about 30 clients fill that out, and they for the most part said very positive things, especially about customer service. So we try to be very responsive, and I guess on that note, Ben, with our partnership and our teaming arrangement is over time, Homewood will be responding to more and more requests, especially during hours when in the U.S. we're asleep or we're off or something. So that's a great way for the partnership to grow.
Yeah, awesome. Got a question from Rod Fraser. If you have multiple users using the program, can you see their data in real time on your device, or does it need to synchronize at the end of the day?
You know the answer to this, Damien, right?
Yeah.
And Ben?
Yeah, it's real time.
It is. It's one of my favorite things at our workshops is we go outside and we collect. So we're going to do this in Melbourne and Sydney and such. We'll do this at the TreeNet conference. We'll go outside and start adding trees. And as soon as you move, the way the program works, as soon as you move the map, because it's online, it refreshes and it will show you the new data point.
It surprised me just last week. Actually, I was playing with it on the desktop, and then I loaded it up on my phone, and the tree was already there. You know, literally under a minute later.
Well, what other questions do we have? I want to make sure
Mark Reynolds has got one for collecting with GPS. Does it accept real-time corrected NEMA sentences, or do you need a conduit program?
Let me try to answer the question this way. So basically, the primary method that even in-house that we use to collect trees is to plot the tree on top of aerial photography. We rarely use GPS to actually collect the XY coordinate, the lat long of the tree. However, we have a lot of clients that do use that because maybe they've already made investments in that technology. They need a certain accuracy, all of those reasons. Or, one of them that's very common is the imagery, the aerial photos. Some areas with urban development, it's so fast that you'll have new areas where you can't even see the trees because imagery was a year or two old. And that's a good example where GPS comes in as a benefit. So what I was saying earlier is when you add a tree, it's an option to have a little pop-up that says, do you want to add the tree with plotting it in the map, or do you want to use GPS? And it's fairly obvious, at least to me, that if you're on, say, a smartphone or a tablet, the GPS might be 5 meters off or even worse. And so that's where the Bluetooth GPS receivers come into play. And I still have even an additional answer to this in just a second as well with an import tool. So basically, you can use the Bluetooth GPS. What it does is it overrides the internal GPS of your whatever smart device you're using. And again, they're a fraction of the cost of what GPS units were, 5-10 years ago. So
providing you can pair your handheld device to your external GPS, away you go.
Exactly. Yeah. And most of them come with essentially a software that comes with it that helps you to, what's the right word? Not integrate, but essentially I don't know, what's the right word? Configure, to configure it for your device. So we used one called, the unit is called Bad Elf, or maybe that's the model. It's just one of the ones that's out there. And we did quite a bit of testing about a year ago with it. So some are going to be easier with Bluetooth GPS than others in terms of that configuration, but they do come. Oh, Ben, I just realized I forgot to change your email at the top. Sorry about
No, it's all good, mate. Don't worry.
one of our staff, Chris, is getting the credit. But the other part to that question, and it's a long one because there's a lot of options out there, but you can also collect with GPS, and then we have a tool where it's an import-export tool where you can import data points into Tree Plotter as well. So it's something we turn on for certain clients when they request it, but it doesn't seem like we've really standardized it as much. Anyway, it's another option if you want.
Well, I'm not sure if there's any other questions. I can't see any so far.
No other questions?
I can't see any coming.
Okay. Well, again, yeah, we would be happy to. Well, hopefully, you'll join us at the workshops either at TreeNet in Adelaide, which is only a couple of weeks from now. We also have the Melbourne and Sydney workshops, and then through QAA the Brisbane workshop as well. So I'll just pull that up real quick for anybody. It's just at planetgeo/events, and of course you can reach out to me or Ben with any questions you have. So.
Yeah, got another question from Mark Reynolds. Can the license be extended to greater than 40,000 trees? And look, Mark, the answer is yes. Ian and Co have got a pretty good package from a pricing point of view, and it basically goes up in increments of 10,000 trees, isn't it, Ian?
It is, and it's funny. So I just asked one of our folks last week, I said, people think that means only up to 40,000 trees. And Mark, it's a fair question. And I told our folks that do the marketing on the website, I was like, it's not clear enough. They really think that's the end of the world and you can never have 40,001 trees. But no, we have a couple clients with 700,000 trees in their application. We try to scale it up, as Ben said. I want to say it's $250 US per 10,000 additional trees. So it's a pretty small uplift, to go beyond that. So
yeah, so if you've got 50,000 trees, you'll be up for 7,250.
Yeah, and again, we'd probably, for something that size, it probably wouldn't be a linear price increase, quite honestly. So
yeah.
But yeah, this is the page for not only pricing, and we are going to launch international pricing as an option here very soon. But yeah, you can compare the plans. We have a base level, and it basically turns off several tools like reports and work history and photos. But it's an a la carte thing. So if you wanted the base level, you could just add reports for $500. You could just add photo attachments for, I think it's a $300 or something. So that's important to know. Treemium really is only for, say, and we only have a handful of those, and it's really multi-user, multi-organizational, maybe several cities, or in our case, in the U.S., a state agency, or it's a nonprofit that has tons of different programs, things like that. So it's really more of a custom setup anyway. And then these are the various modules that I showed quickly.
Cool.
Well, I think we'll wrap up, and sorry we went a little bit long, but thanks so much everyone for joining and all the great questions you had.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Hopefully we'll see you all in Melbourne. If you can't make it to Melbourne, we'll see you at TreeNet, and if you can't make it there, we'll see you in Sydney and or Brisbane. So yeah, come along, and I'm sure once you start to use it in the field, you'll be able to make a decision pretty quickly, I would think.
And just get rid of that. Well, great. Thank you again. You know how to contact us, and look forward to questions you have and the next steps, and seeing you again at the conferences and workshops.
Thanks, Ian.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Damien. Yep, really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.